you.
He recently completed the first year of his historical presidency at Rice University. Reginald DesRoches is the first black president, the first immigrant, and the first engineer to ever lead Rice since the founding of the university in 1921.
To me, there is an empowerment to know that I'm passing by and I see the founder, who obviously did a lot of great things for the university. We wouldn't have a university without him. At the same time, we know he was involved in the slave trade. He owned slaves. And here I am as president of this university.
I'm Eddie Robinson. Stay tuned as we chat unguarded with Rice University's Chief Executive Officer, Reginald DesRoches. How does he feel about leading an institution of higher education when its founder, during slavery, profited off individuals who looked like him? Oh yeah, I feel you. We hear you. I see you. You're listening to ICU. I'm your host, Eddie Robinson.
As the 8th president of this fine university, and that's Reginald DesRoches.
The university president has, in some ways, just 2 jobs. Though, Reggie, I have to say, some days it seems more like 2,000 jobs. Those 2 jobs are to advance the institution in the present and to create new possibilities for the future. And it's this latter point that certainly makes me, at the very least, a very interested bystander here. And I could not be more thrilled than to have Reggie succeed me. I have every confidence that he will realize those possibilities and create new ones, both for himself as president and for his successors.
What you've just heard was a very small portion of a clip produced by Rice University, the announcement of Reginald DesRoches, who had been serving as the university's provost at the time, being named as the 8th president of Rice. He succeeded President David Lebrun, who was the gentleman speaking prior to my intro. Dr. DesRoches, of Haitian descent, is walking history. He's a globally recognized structural engineer, as well as an earthquake resilience expert. Now, if you recall, back in 2010, a massive 7.0 magnitude earthquake devastated the countries of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Most severely affected was Haiti, where the Haitian government reported an official death toll of more than 300,000, one of the worst natural disasters in recorded history. Just days after it happened, DesRoches would serve as the key technical leader in the U.S.'s response to that event. He's been at Rice since 2017, when he accepted the position as Dean of Engineering at the George R. Brown School of Engineering. Now, prior to that, he served as chair of the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Georgia Tech in Atlanta. DesRoches has authored over 300 technical publications and has mentored more than 30 doctoral students, many of whom hold faculty positions at top universities around the world. We're absolutely delighted and grateful that he's taken time out of his busy schedule to chat with us in his beautiful office overlooking the entire campus as well as parts of the city of Houston, the Chief Executive Officer of Rice University, Reginald DesRoches. Reginald, thank you so much for being a guest on
Thank
ICU.
you, Eddie. Thank you, Eddie, for having me.
Yeah, congratulations on becoming the first black president of Rice, the first immigrant becoming president of Rice. You know, I'd say it's been a year?
It's been a year and a month.
It's been a year and a month. Interesting.
A year and a month.
How has it been? You know, was it what you've been expected?
It's been busy. And by the way, I'm also the first engineer president.
Interestingly
let's
enough.
not forget that.
Yes. And from what I gather, it was sort of like from your parents saying, you know, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be an engineer.
Yes.
That sounds so familiar with my family. And they said those exact words. You're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be an engineer.
Or a disappointment. That's how my parents would have put it.
That is fantastic. I love that. What is up with that? Before we even get into what it was like, for a year here at Rice, what's with that statement of parents coming at us with these real statement? It's not even paraphrasing. This is exactly what they said to me. And sound like exactly in that order.
Yeah.
You're going to be a doctor, lawyer, and engineer. Why do you think they came at us?
You know, at least for me, I'm an immigrant child. I was actually born in Haiti. My parents left Haiti when they were young adults in their 30s and came to this country, had to learn the language, worked really hard. My mom was a nurse. She worked double shifts. My dad worked, weekend jobs in addition to his full-time job. And so they sacrificed everything for us. And so they made that investment of their time and everything for us to have an education, to have the opportunities that they didn't have and they knew they wouldn't have. And so, they were on us as kids. It's like, you're studying. You're studying every day. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. We're putting everything so that you guys can have the opportunities we didn't have. And so, yeah, it was just the way it was in the house where, we knew we had to perform or else we'd have to pay the consequences.
Well, it's mechanical engineering.
My undergraduate's in mechanical, then my graduate work is in civil engineering.
And this was at
Berkeley.
At Berkeley, with a doctorate in structural engineering at the University of California. A year and a month. What's it been like? Here we go.
It's been great. I mean, first of all, I feel blessed to be in this role, to be leading this incredible institution. It's been a busy year. Fortunately, this summer it's been a little bit of a lull, just because the normal cadence of things doesn't occur during the summer. But it's been a very, very busy year in terms of just the change that I'm trying to embark upon at Rice. Bringing in a whole new leadership team, hiring 9 new vice presidents out of 12 in a period of a year. And then just the sheer volume of events I went to, that was probably what's most surprising to me. We probably were out, my wife and I, because she was part of this as a partner in this. We were probably gone 6 nights a week. We weren't at home. We were at an event in the city of Houston or outside the city of Houston or hosting something at our house. Okay. And so that's what was probably the most surprising is boy, you're out a lot. You're out in the community a lot, which was great. I got to meet a lot of people from the community, a lot of alums, a lot of friends of Rice, and got to see how much people really love and value the university.
And that's the kind of person that you are, right? I mean, I think for the first day that you were on board here at Rice, you were out and about and meeting students and going into classrooms and going to football practices and all that. Is that the kind of person that you are, and you want to make sure it's hands-on and people see you?
It is. I mean, that's what I enjoy most, is talking to people, talking one-on-one, talking to small groups, going where people live and where people work and where they are to see what they're doing. For me, it's important that I understand what people are going through. And when I was dean, the first thing I did was I said, I'm going to go to every individual faculty member's lab, meet their students, see what they're doing.
It's wonderful when the president comes to visit your office on his first day in the office. We're very honored.
It's really humble to see him kind of have lunch with people who work for housing and dining, and I think that really sets the stone for how his leadership is going to be.
It took me a year, but I visited around 120 people, because for me, it's important that I understand what people are going through. If I want to help them change or help the university change to meet their needs, I have to go to where they are.
You caught me at the beginning saying, first engineer, president. What does this moment, really mean, for you and your career? I mean, and what I'm really getting at is, what does this say about our country? Because we're still experiencing these firsts. And here it is, 2024 and beyond, and we're still talking about individuals being firsts. What's going on? How can you interpret that?
Yeah, a couple of ways. I mean, certainly it speaks to the value, going back to our parents pushing us, the value of education and transforming lives. And when I think about why I'm in this profession, in some ways, I'm an example of why I'm in this profession, to be able to bring that to the masses, to transform lives. My life, my siblings' lives were transformed because of our ability to go and get an education at great universities, to be able to come from where we've come from, born in the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, first-generation students, to then go on to be able to first get degrees from great institutions, in my case a PhD from a great institution, then go teach at great institutions and become a dean and a provost and now president and one of the best institutions in the world, speaks to the power of education and transforming lives. And this is why I'm in this profession, because I think we need to continue to think about that and remember that's why we do what we do as educators.
You were born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, then migrated to the U.S. where you grew up in Queens. What do you remember about your time in Haiti, and what was it like for you growing up as an immigrant?
Yeah, so I didn't remember Haiti from the time I was a kid because I came when I was 1, and I only went back once when I was a young adult. But I went back after the Haiti earthquake in 2010. And so this is, I guess, 13 years ago now. And that's when it really hit home for me. The country I was from, why my parents did what they did, why they were always so frugal, why they pushed us hard, because I can see the poverty that they came from. Because I was too young to remember all that, and it was a transformational experience for me to be part of that, not just to help the country of my birth through this tragedy, but also to better understand where I came from. Even though I lived in a somewhat Caribbean community in Queens, to be in Haiti, and I went back many times, it really brought home why my parents pushed us so hard, and just really how amazing they were to be able to leave that, come here, start all over, and provide us with the opportunities that they did.
This is ICU. I'm Eddie Robinson, and we're chatting with the first Black president of Rice University, Dr. Reginald DesRoches, a Haitian immigrant with a decorated career in engineering. We're learning more about his family in Haiti, what it was like for him growing up as a child, as well as his experiences here in Houston as a leader to a highly prestigious institution that's widely regarded as one of the top universities in the country. We're grateful to him that he's allowed our ICU team to stop by his office on the campus for our conversation as he wraps up his first year of an historical presidency here at Rice University. You're the youngest of your siblings, correct? It was pretty tough in this household.
It was tough. In some ways, I benefited from being the youngest.
Did
because
you?
By the time they got to me, they were tired and they weren't as strict as they were in some of my older siblings.
Excellent.
But it was a strict household for sure. It was a typical Caribbean household. You had to get home. You had to put your hours in. You had to study. I was fortunate enough to be able to at least have a little bit of a break. They allowed me to run track and get away from the house a little bit. Okay. But all my siblings went to school locally at the local college, St. John's University. My parents wouldn't have thought of sending a kid away to college. But again, being the youngest and having 3 siblings advocate for me to go away to school was the benefit of being the youngest child.
As you continue into your career, I mean, you can't help but think about the sayings, the quotes, or something your parents would have said to you that still resonates with you to this day, and perhaps you've even shared it with your children. Can you think of anything in terms of sayings or quotes or
they talked about a couple of things. Obviously, the importance of hard work. You're not going to be given anything. You have to work hard. Nobody's going to hand anything to you. But they also talked about the importance of treating everybody with respect and helping people. And I could see that firsthand. One of the things that they did do, and I think in some ways I've probably benefited from that more than anything else, is they would always have family members come from Haiti that were transitioning to the U.S. They'd put them up in our home. We didn't have a big home. They'd put them up. They'd feed them. Could be years until they transitioned and were able to get on their own feet. And that's something that stuck with me in terms of the importance of helping other people. That's something that really, really stuck with me.
You mentioned, helping out in the recovery efforts of 2010's devastating earthquake.
Breaking news story tonight, a major earthquake has hit Haiti.
It was a magnitude 7, possibly the strongest quake ever to hit that region.
What was it like returning and seeing all that devastation?
It was probably one of the most memorable experiences I've had in my life.
Really?
Just for one, the devastation. I mean, it looked like a war zone. And I had been to other post-earthquake places, but nothing was like this. So you have to think about a quarter of a million people died in an earthquake, country of 4 or 5 million. So something in the range of 1 in 10 people perished, and then twice that were injured. And you can just see the devastation. I got there less than 2 weeks after the earthquake, so there were still bodies in the streets, and there was a stench of death. And it was really tough. And in fact, when I came home after that first trip, I remember my wife would tell me that I didn't say anything. I was numb from seeing so much death and children. We passed by. I have a picture that I give in talks of a kindergarten, and you can tell it's kindergarten because they have little kids. A picture of little kids, and around 50 kids was still buried in that place when we passed by there. And you can smell the stench of that. And so to see that time and time again, it was really an emotional experience from that perspective for me. But I also got to understand just the strength of the Haitian people, because despite that, people were there helping each other and doing things that just reinforce, the strength that my parents had, because they came from this tradition of faith and just this, never give up kind of mentality. It was a cab driver, I recall, that was driving us around, and we were talking, and he lost three of his family members, 2 kids and his wife. And he said, but he's moving on. It's that kind of strength that really stuck with me.
Coming up, we continue our chat with the 8th president of Rice University, Reginald DesRoches. We'll find out more about his thoughts on the Supreme Court's decision to strike down affirmative action in college admissions, forcing many of these institutions to seek out other ways to achieve diversity. And speaking of diversity, we learn more about what President DesRoches thinks about the state of Texas and why he believes measures of inclusion are being dismantled at colleges across the region. Plus, we dive deep into the complicated and controversial history of Rice University and its segregated past. I'm Eddie Robinson, a provocative segment of ICU that you do not want to miss. We'll be right back. If you're enjoying this program, please be sure to subscribe to our podcast, ICU with Eddie Robinson. You can hear all the past episodes and be notified when new episodes are released. Also, please take a minute to give us a review or comment. We love getting feedback from our listeners. It's ICU. I'm Eddie Robinson, as we continue our conversation with President Reginald DesRoches. He's leading one of the most prestigious universities in the country. In terms of academic rankings, Rice is considered a member of the top tier of national universities, according to the U.S. News and World Report. But the history of Rice and its connection to slavery, namely by the institution's founder, William Marsh Rice, has stirred a bit of controversy as of late. You see, the founder had chartered Rice Institute in 1891, strictly for the white inhabitants of the city of Houston and the state of Texas. The Rice Institute opened its doors in 1912 and became a university in 1960. Black undergraduates weren't allowed to pursue an education at Rice until around the mid-1960s. And journalists have recently taken time to dive into past university yearbooks, only to discover a student chapter of the Ku Klux Klan, with social gatherings taking place at least until the late 80s. In early 2023, Rice announced plans to move a statue of William Rice from a prominent spot at the center of a frequently visited courtyard to a less visible location on the perimeter of the lawn. The university also formed a task force in 2019 to address this complicated history with the hopes of initiating dialogue on campus and offer up a better understanding of its past moving forward. ICU spoke with historians and co-chairs of this task force back in 2021 in an episode hosted by Melanie Price. Here's an excerpt from that conversation with Dr. Alexander Bird and Dr. Caleb McDaniel, both with Rice University.
What is the connection between Rice and slavery? What are the things that you found?
Well, we started there. Our charge calls us to look at the history of slavery. And I think, one of the things that we discovered early on was that the question of Rice's connection to slavery had not been extensively studied in the past. It was known that William Marsh Rice, who is the namesake of the university and who gave the initial gifts that endowed the Rice Institute, did enslave people, but there wasn't a lot of additional work into the details of that. So we know, for example, and that in 1860 on the United States Census, William Marsh Rice was listed as enslaving at least 16 people in 1860. And of course, that's a snapshot of one moment in time. But we've also been able to locate documents including fugitive slave advertisements, lines in financial ledgers that are held at the university that can give some names to some of the people that William Marsh Rice enslaved, and give us a little bit of a better sense of the extent of his connections to the history of slavery.
So were these folks who he enslaved, was it on the site of Rice's campus, or did he have a plantation site elsewhere?
So Rice was a merchant, and so one of the things that the update attempts to do is to contextualize his slave owning as a member of if we're going to call Houston an urban area during this time, what it meant to be a slave owning member of the Texas urban elite. And so William Marsh's Rice, he wasn't a plantation owner in the classic sense that we think of a plantation owner striding across a rural landscape and interacting with agricultural workers. He was a slave owner in a city. But one of the most, I think, intriguing and important findings of the update is contextualizing the ways that an urban merchant, through his financial practices, became entangled in many, many ways in owning people. Also, the updates outline some of his partnerships with folks who were plantation owners themselves.
Taken from episode 25 of ICU. That was Dr. Alexander Bird and Dr. Caleb McDaniel, Rice historians and co-chairs of the Task Force on Slavery, Segregation, and Racial Injustice. This committee was formed to address the segregationist history of Rice University. Now, all of this context is important as we head into this segment's chat with the current president of Rice, Dr. Reginald DesRoches. We were fortunate to interview him inside his own office located on Rice University's campus. Is there a weight to knowing that the person whom Rice University is named after, William Marsh Rice, profited off the slave trade of the people who looked just like you, and now you're president of the same university?
Yeah, there's a weight for sure, but there's also an empowerment to that. To me, there is an empowerment to know that I'm passing by and I see the founder, who obviously did a lot of great things for the university in terms of we wouldn't have a university without him. At the same time, we know he was involved in the slave trade. He owned slaves, and here I am as president of this university. To me, that's very empowering, and it speaks to the change that this nation and this university has gone through. Because remember, we didn't accept black students at Rice until the late 1960s. And yet, here I am as a black president. It's empowering.
I'll say, despite this institution being private, have you sensed any pressures or suggestions from donors or others involved within the university to remove or roll back, diversity-driven inclusionary programs here at Rice?
We have not. I have not, for sure. And obviously, the political climate is out there in terms of what's happening. We see what's happening in the state of Texas.
Today, the Texas House passed Senate Bill 17 to prevent public colleges and universities in the state from having diversity, equity, and inclusion offices or policies.
As a private institution, of course, we're somewhat shielded from some of that, not necessarily from the affirmative action ruling. Yeah. And we've been very clear about the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion at Rice. To me, it's not a political issue. It is strictly how we educate our students. It is part of our mission. Rice students are amazing, not because they're smart and have one of the highest SAT scores in the country or because our faculty are great. It's because we bring this incredibly diverse group of people to campus. They live together. They work together. they're in classes together, they learn from each other. And that special sauce is why I think our students are incredible and are leaders all over the world. And we can't have that without a diverse student body.
Over the summer, of 2023, the U.S. Supreme Court voted 6-3 in Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard, subsequently dismantling affirmative action in colleges.
We begin tonight with the Supreme Court striking down affirmative action and reshaping college admissions. In a 6-3 decision, the justices ruled that Harvard University and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution by considering race when deciding whether to admit someone to their school. A landmark case overturning nearly 50 years of precedent. The ruling means higher education institutions will need to come up with new ways to create diverse student bodies.
What were your thoughts about this decision? How will this court decision affect Rice moving forward with its admissions process?
Yeah, we were disappointed, although we expected this would be the case and we had been preparing for that. We hope it doesn't impact us. Obviously, we're going to follow the rules, and we no longer will use race as one of many factors in our admissions. But we're going to have to work harder, and we're going to have to do other things to try to maintain a diverse student body, and we're committed to doing that, and I'm confident we will be able to do that.
Some have even argued about ending the practice of legacy admissions and allowing wealthy, less qualified applicants into elite schools.
Harvard University is facing yet another challenge to its admissions process, this time by a famed civil rights group. It alleges the university's legacy admissions policy favors the children of its mostly white alumni.
This comes after the Supreme Court ruled last week that colleges must ignore applicants' race when making admissions decisions.
So the NAACP is calling on more than 500 public schools, more than 1,300 private colleges and universities to end legacy preferences.
What do you think it'll take for more high-achieving students from low and middle-income families to ensure that there's access for them at an elite school? Even at Rice?
I think a couple of things. One is we have to, and all universities, when I say we Rice and we schools like Rice, have to work harder to go into those disadvantaged communities where there are talented kids hiding in many places because we don't know they're there. So we have to work harder to get in these communities to find these young women and men. The other thing is we have to tell them about our financial aid. For us, we have this incredible, the Rice Investment Financial Aid Package where we provide aid up to $200,000. A lot of kids don't even apply to Rice because they think, I can't afford it, it's so expensive. And yet the case is they wouldn't have to pay anything. So we have to do that. We have to do more with community colleges. Something that we haven't done as well. There are something like 500,000 community college students in the broader Houston area. There's talent there that should be at Rice, and so we need to form more partnerships there. And we're forming partnerships with HBCUs as a way of really doing more in that community. So a lot of things that we can do, and I'm confident we're going to be able to maintain the diversity, which is so important to our student body at Rice.
If I may speak freely, Mr. President, what do you make of all of this? We've got the state of Texas and what they're doing with, rolling back diversity, banning, diversity issues. And, you've got, affirmative action going on. Why do you believe these initiatives are being dismantled? The real reason the state of Texas is doing things like this. What say you? What's going on here?
All I can say is I think it's a lack of understanding of what we do, of how we educate our students and what our DEI officers do, and how we think about diversity. Diversity is not just black and white. Diversity is so much broader than that. That's right. So I think it's just a lack of education, a lack of understanding of what universities do and how universities educate their students to be great citizens when they leave here.
You're listening to ICU. I'm Eddie Robinson, here speaking with Rice University President Reginald DesRoches. Dr. DesRoches, your tenure at Rice University began in 2017, being the Dean of Engineering. Now, prior to that, you served as chair of the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Georgia Tech in Atlanta. You improved school rankings there. During those recovery efforts in Haiti, you were known as Engineer DesRoches in taking on this massive endeavor. At some point, you had to say to yourself, I could become university president if I wanted it. Can you share with us What was going on in your mind that helped to elevate that kind of thinking? I mean, what made you think that you could be president? What gave you the audacity to think that you can be president of Rice University?
Yeah, I think I've always thought that I can do whatever I put my mind to, for sure. I wasn't seeking, when I came here as Dean of Engineering, then clearly once you go on that track, Dean, and the natural next step is Provost and President, I wasn't necessarily thinking it was going to be in 5 years. I wasn't thinking it would be at Rice. My goal is always to get in, do a great job, and have an impact. And then the rest will follow, whatever that might be, whatever the time frame might be. And that's always been my approach to life. And certainly once you become a provost, which happened 3 years later, then it's like, okay, at some point I have to decide, am I going to go back to the faculty and go back and do my earthquake research, or will I pursue a presidency at some point and have impact in a different way? Both are very impactful. And I knew I was likely going to do that. I didn't know where, I didn't know when. And again, it was an issue of timing and being at the right place in the right time and being prepared.
Yeah.
And being prepared.
If you don't mind, if you can kind of go through the challenges of your first year.
Yeah. I mean, obviously one of the challenges is building a new team, right? So I'm in the process of hiring all new leaders and getting them in and getting them all on the same page and accustomed to the Rice culture, developing a strategic vision for the university. The personal challenge I face is balancing, right? Balancing my time and trying to find time for myself. And, I probably didn't have the right balance this last year. I was gone a lot and probably didn't sleep as much as I should. And now I'm sort of reassessing and working with my assistant. Okay, why don't you save me, 15 minutes every couple hours so I can clear my inbox, because I need to figure out how to better manage my time so that I do have a little bit more time throughout the day to do some things and think, as opposed to just constantly being in meetings in the day and then constantly being in events at night. And so the first year was a challenge from a time management perspective. And I blame Ruth Simmons for some of that, because she said, Reginald, your first year, go to everything. Don't say no to anything. Really? And she said, be out there as much as possible that first year. Then you can decide what you need to go to and not. And that was great advice, but I'm exhausted. And so, I just need to figure out how to better manage my time so that I have a little bit more time to sort of think and do other things and make sure I get a good night's sleep and take care of myself.
And then you have a great workout regimen, I would imagine, right?
I do. I'm pretty disciplined. I think I'm disciplined in general, but I'm certainly disciplined with working out. So I work out 6 days a week. I have a Garmin watch I got for Father's Day that helps track my minutes. But no, I work out. And for me, it's something that helps clear my mind. It's the only time I have sort of to myself. And run twice a week, and I have a Peloton. I'll do that twice a week. I'll lift twice a week, and the running I do with my wife. So it's at least part of the day we have together. It gets a little challenging in August and July, much nicer in September and the rest of the year, but it's tough.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Like, it's 110.
Yeah. We do it first, and I normally always work out first thing in the morning at 6 o'clock.
There you go.
Get out there and do it, but it's still, it's 82 degrees and it's a feel-like temperature of 94. So it's still tough, but it's for me, it's important for my mental health to be able to get out and do that, and I just feel better throughout the day. So that's something that I don't sacrifice.
And what I admire, how you're just so open in terms of accessibility.
Yeah.
And sometimes, from a student standpoint, coming from a university that, I went to my master's in NYU, I hardly saw the president of that school.
Yeah.
I never saw the president. But you are accessible and you allow yourself to be that way.
And I've always been that way. And I think that's why this role is a good fit, because that's also part of the Rice culture, is accessibility. I get an email from any student that says, I want to talk to you about something, or I have an idea. I'll meet with them. It may take a couple of weeks to get them on the calendar, but I'll meet with them. And that's part of the Rice culture, and it's something I love to do. I absolutely love to sit down and talk to students, and I'm accessible to the faculty. Sometimes if I'm just walking through campus, I'll walk through a building and pop my head in the lab and introduce myself. It's just part of who I am.
Mr. President, I have to commend you. On some level, if I were a senior in high school right now trying to determine my next moves, my next steps, it would be difficult for me not to consider pursuing a degree at Rice with you at the helm. You're a great mentor for someone who's looking to become a true leader via that engineering route. Someone who already is an engineer, someone who brings people together with whatever project that's up for the task, someone that encourages and inspires others, who's open and accessible to everyone, regardless of a title. Plus there's an attention to detail, right? When you're an engineer and you're black, someone who's black, that's real leadership. And you'd be my hero. You were the first black dean at Rice, the first black provost, the first black president now. I'm sure you're a hero to countless individuals who've heard your story, those who followed you, what you've had to endure to get to where you are, your work ethic. I mean, it's really admirable.
Let me just say, I'm still very uncomfortable with that whole, people tell me, oh, you're like a hero. It's just not,
Really?
It's interesting. I'm just not comfortable with that. It may be because of the way I was raised and my personality, but people would come up and say, "Oh, can I get your autograph?" It's like, no, let's take a picture, let's take a selfie together. It's just, it's just, I'm just Reggie. I'm not. It's just not something that, and it may be because of the way I was brought up, but it's just something I'm still uncomfortable with.
With this institution being a highly selective private university in Houston, Texas, Rice is often called the Harvard of the South. Do you agree with that moniker?
I would say Harvard is the Rice of the Northeast.
Interesting.
So I don't necessarily like these comparisons, whether Harvard or the South or any of the things, because we're unique. We're very different. Harvard's a great institution. We're a great institution, but we are a very special place and a very unique place because of where we're located in the city of Houston, our unique size, the culture we have, the culture of care. We are just different from anybody else in the nation or in the world.
Coming up, we wrap up our conversation with Rice University President Reginald DesRoches. We learn more about the future of Rice and what role Dr. DesRoches will play in positioning his institution as a place for academic excellence. And what kind of legacy does he plan to leave behind? Share your thoughts and insight. Follow us on Instagram or send us an email. talk@iseeushow.org. I'm Eddie Robinson. Our final segment of ICU comes your way right after this. If you're enjoying this program, please be sure to subscribe to our podcast, ICU with Eddie Robinson. You can hear all the past episodes and be notified when new episodes are released. Also, please take a minute to give us a review or comment. We love getting feedback from our listeners. You're listening to ICU. I'm your host, Eddie Robinson. We've been speaking with Dr. Reginald DesRoches, the 8th president of Rice. He's a Haitian-American engineer who's made history as the first black president to lead this institution. His decorated career includes work as a civil and structural engineer and nearly 30 years of experience as a researcher and educator. Albeit a private university, Dr. DesRoches is also remaining steadfast in championing measures of diversity and inclusion at Rice, despite the recent U.S. Supreme Court ruling that ends the consideration of race in college admissions and Texas state officials working to dismantle diversity programs at colleges across the region. But Dr. DesRoches is not the only voice committed to diversity and inclusion in higher education. Dr. Ruth Simmons, a Houston native, has been extremely vocal in speaking and writing on subjects that relate to these initiatives. She's now joined forces with Rice as the president's Distinguished Fellow, serving as an advisor to the president's office on a variety of matters across the Rice campus. We wrap up our chat with Rice University's Chief Executive Officer, Reginald DesRoches. According to the National Science Foundation, blacks make up 5% of all engineers. The Journal of Blacks in Higher Education states that blacks make up just under 13% of all university presidents. As someone who's part of the minority of both engineers and university presidents, has there ever been any moments of racial incidents that still impact you to this very day?
That's against me in particular. Not direct. And when I say that, not direct, nobody's, saying, oh, you're black, you're not qualified. But I guarantee you there are positions early in my career, opportunities I did not get because I looked the way I do. And I've been told that later on. People weren't sure how you would fare at this university when I was applying to university jobs. And so not, malicious, but, there was just a concern whether or not you'd be able to fit into this university. I think we've come a long way with that, but there's no doubt there are opportunities that perhaps I didn't have because of the color of my skin.
Yeah, and we ask that, we pretty much ask that quite a bit for our guests because it gets at the heart of the differences that we all have. And for someone to really sort of capture and understand an incident that may have happened to them, because I'm sure there is, right? And maybe you can share that with us, a narrative, some story that, or an incident that happened even as a young kid that really sort of inspired you or encouraged you or motivated you to say, you know what, something's not right here. This didn't feel right, what she just said to me. This didn't feel right, what he just called me. Can you think of anything?
But there are all these subtle things that happen that whether it's somebody that sort of moves out the way when I'm walking down the street, I still get that. I mean, it happens less now that I'm older, but certainly as a young adult, even as a professor, even as a dean of engineering, if it's dark and I'm wearing a hood and I'm running, people there's still this lack of comfort that happens as a black man walking down the street when it's dark. And so that continues to happen. That hasn't changed. Even though I'm president of Rice University, that's something that can still happen and still does happen. And so, so there are tons of these things. One of the questions I was asked, which was an interesting question after I became president, during the inauguration, and I think it was an alum came to me and said, and this wasn't a directly racist comment, it was just an interesting comment, but he's like, wow, you're born in Haiti. He said, what's the chance of a kid today born in Haiti becoming president of Rice University? He said, it must be 1 billion to 1. And he put like an emphasis on 1 billion. Must be 1 billion to 1. I thought to myself, really? 1 billion? I didn't, it caught me off guard. I didn't have a comment. 1 billion to 1.
Billion. Yeah.
What does that mean? That it's just, it's unacceptable almost, right?
This is ICU. I'm Eddie Robinson as we continue our conversation with Rice President Reginald DesRoches. Dr. DesRoches, I'm thinking of one individual who's been an amazing advocate for creating equity between the state's more substantially funded predominantly white institutions and HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, namely Prairie View A&M. It's Dr. Ruth Simmons. This pioneer, this trailblazer, in my opinion, raised the stakes, raised the standards for other university presidents who come after her at Prairie View. She increased research spending. She single-handedly ushered in major financial contributions and donors to the table of Prairie View. Dr. Simmons served for 6 remarkable and transformative years as president and is currently working with you as the president's distinguished fellow.
Let's be careful of a narrative that overstates the racial implications of today's ceremony, for that is only part of the story. President DesRoches will not and must not be given a pass because of William Marsh Rice's error. He must be a president in full, judged not on the basis of his race and how handsome he is. Oh, sorry.
Her 3-month early departure from Prairie View, which is a member of the Texas A&M University system, raised eyebrows from both students and alumni in February of 2023. And it appeared from the outside looking in that she was faced with challenges of seeing the Texas A&M system, its administrators, its Board of Regents, all share in that passion, all share in that commitment to learning the needs of Prairie View and its affairs moving forward. Not going into any details with any of this, but I'm wondering if you could offer up some words of encouragement for alumni, me, for instance, I'm an alumni at Prairie View. But can you provide some words of advice for those who are affiliated with HBCUs, those universities who face funding challenges, especially when it's compared to predominantly white institutions? Words of encouragement as a president of a university who has to consistently work with administrators from other institutions on certain matters. What say you to all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, and obviously Ruth can give you the details on what went down. I would say don't lose hope. The role that Prairie View and other schools like Prairie View play is so critical. And one of the things that I always took to heart when I would talk to Ruth, and I talked to her frequently even during that time, is she would talk about how she's there because of the students. It's all about the students, and she cares so. And I think that's what made her such a great leader, because she really cared about the students and the mission of universities in helping and changing these students' lives. And she never forgot that. And that's what everything she did was around that. And so I tell alums, don't forget, everything you do for the university should be around supporting these incredible young women and men, so that they have the opportunities that you have.
Has she imparted any advice to you as in your prestigious career, as a university president?
Are you kidding? Almost every month. No.
Oh, really?
Ruth has been. She tells it to you straight. Reginald, I wouldn't do that. She calls me Reginald, but I've been very fortunate to know her since I came to Rice, and I've leaned on her during the interview process as I was going through that. I asked her questions. Okay, for this next stage, what should I do? For this next stage, what should I do? And obviously now that she's here, I have lunch with her monthly and just bounce ideas. I know I will get the truth from her. She'll tell me if I'm doing something wrong. She'll lay it out straight. And so she's really, really a valuable asset to the university and certainly to me personally. And I'll tell you, the best piece of advice she gave me was during the last stages of the interview process for presidency. I knew there were a handful of candidates, probably two. And I was like, Ruth, I have an all-day interview. What do I need to do at this stage? And she's like, it's not about how qualified you are at this stage. They know you can do the job. They want to know who you are as a person. Tell them who you are. Tell them your story. I was like, well, I don't think I have it. She said, tell them you want to take 10 minutes to tell them your story. And I did that, and it had a big impact.
Shout out, Dr. Ruth. We love you. What is the legacy, Mr. President, that you would like to leave behind for your children?
For my children, I thought you were going to ask for the university, because I always avoid that question. Others will define the legacy. I lead with integrity. I always do the right thing. And I constantly tell the kids, do the right thing. Make sure you do the right thing. Be a person of integrity.
What can we sort of look forward to with the DesRoches experience here at Rice? Yeah, I mean, a lot of the same things this year. I mean, I don't plan to pull back a lot on things now that we have a new team on board. We have all the new leadership. I still will be out in the community, still will be engaged in the city of Houston, engaged on campus. Probably a little bit more travel on the road, in terms of meeting alumni. I didn't do as much of that this past year, but more of the same thing. It's a great place. It's an exciting time. It's an exciting time for higher ed, I think. Challenging, but exciting at the same time in terms of the impact universities have on their communities. And so I want to make sure that Rice is right there. And is there anything missing? Like, is there anything that in your mind that, you look at how you've performed and what's going on with the university in and of itself? What's missing? I don't think there's anything missing. Oh, I don't think so. Everything's here. This is an amazing place. There really is nothing missing. Yeah. No, it's a pretty remarkable place. The more I learn about both the city of Houston, Rice University, Rice's unique role in the city, I realize how fortunate I am to be in this role. You're the chief executive officer, 8,200 plus students, 8 schools, just under 1,000 faculty members. You've transformed Rice into a new level of distinction, nationally, internationally, positioning the university as a beacon of academic excellence, award-winning scholarship, impactful research. Despite what the state of Texas thinks of diversity, you've made sure to include in public statements, in press releases. You're maintaining a commitment in inclusionary measures, and that is admirable there. You're married to a powerhouse leader, accomplished healthcare professional, highly accomplished nurse practitioner, esteemed administrator, Paula Gilmore DesRoches. You have 3 incredible children. You've accomplished so much, Dr. DesRoches. What lessons have you learned about yourself thus far?
I think the importance of being true to yourself. Being yourself. And, there are times where I've tried to say, I'm going to try to do something different. I'll try to do this. I always come back to, I'm going to be myself. I know there are certain areas I'm not comfortable in, or certain venues I'm not going to try to be somebody else. Be true to yourself and be yourself. And I've learned that, and now that is my guiding light. I'm going to always do things my way, and I always do things the way I'm comfortable doing them, and doing them so I can sleep at night.
That is all we have. I'm just grateful that you were able to get through a lot of the questions. I was thinking I was trying to catch you off guard. You were like, no.
You're a very natural at this, obviously. And so.
Rice University President Reginald DesRoches, thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Our team includes Technical Director Todd Holzlander, Producer Laura Walker, Editors Mark DeClaudio and John Mitchell Good. ICU is a production of Houston Public Media. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen and download your favorite shows. I'm your host and executive producer, Eddie Robinson. And I feel you. We hear you. I see you. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time.